Thanks very much. Jo Oeo for Korean guests here today. And good afternoon, and I'm here from Wales, so Prynhawn Da, that's Welsh. That's the only bit of Welsh you'll hear, I think, at this event. I'm Ben Lewis. I'm the Iasas Regional Director for Europe, and I've worked in student affairs with a focus on equity, inclusion and mental health for, I guess, the last 20 years, and the last 10 years as Director of Student Life at Cardiff University, setting up a number of programs around access to mental health support for students, among other things, and working for Welsh Government last year as well in the policy space around student mental health. I'm currently Director of the Open University in Wales, which you may be familiar with. It's got quite a large profile in Europe and the UK. But today I'm here to help our fascinating speakers mainly keep to time and also to facilitate questions to our speakers. And we're very fortunate today to have a particularly interesting range and diversity of programs. So first of all, we'll hear from Cecilia Resurreccion and Concha de la Cruz from the University of Asia and the Pacific in the Philippines on measuring and evaluating success in student well-being. And we'll secondly hear from Beatrice Wong and Eva Schreck from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology on peer-to-peer support and peer-to-peer connection. And thirdly, we'll hear from Dr. Dwayne Hunt, the Dean of Students at the American University of Antigua, talking about medical student support in the Caribbean. And finally, we'll hear from Mary Rose Macaran from the De La Salle University in the Philippines on issues around adolescence and gambling. So it's quite a diverse program. There may be some sensitive issues in there today as we're talking about mental health and well-being. So if you need time to leave the room to reflect on that, please do feel that you can do that. And also be respectful of our speakers, some of whom are talking about some challenging issues. The final point I have to remember to mention is there is an Iasas Awards element to our gala dinner on Thursday. And we have a QR code that I will put on my iPad near the door at the very end of the session. If you could scan the QR code on your mobile device and fill in the 3 questions, and it might be that one of our speakers wins. And we should obviously make sure that one of our speakers wins, right? So, so that's not so democratic of me, is it? But there we go. Since I'm not being democratic, I'll stop now and hand over to our first speaker. So Cecilia and Concha de la Cruz, if you could come to the front, and over to you. Thank you.
Okay. So, can you put it up? Okay, so good afternoon to all. Annyeong to the Koreans and maligayang or mabuhay to my fellow Philippine delegates. So this afternoon, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Cecilia Resurreccion from the University of Asia and the Pacific. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Student Affairs. And my co-presenter is Ms. Concha de la Cruz, also a faculty of the School of Education and Human Development, and also the Secretary of the Operations Committee of the Center for Student Affairs. So this afternoon, we are pleased to share with you the study that we made regarding measuring well-being and human flourishing in CSA, the Center for Student Affairs Programs and Services. Okay, there you go. So we wanted to see the impact of our programs and services on our students' holistic development. However, a measure aligned with the CSA framework has not yet been designed. So this is our first attempt. No? This initial study aims to illustrate a process that can be replicated by student professionals like you to capture the dimensions of well-being from both the emic and the ethic perspectives and to support the effective mentoring of student well-being in practice. Um, but before we do that, let me briefly mention some studies on student well-being and its importance in higher education. This emphasizes that when students are well, they can function effectively and respond to school demands given the necessary support from school resources. Thus, the emphasis on focusing on programs that promote balancing the strengths of the students that promote well-being cannot be overemphasized. So the studies in well-being are highlighted in positive psychology, as you know very well, touching on resilience, self-fulfillment, and meaningful relationships. So I'd like to show you the credo of our university. If you would read on the slide, we believe that education is a lifelong process and its focal point is and should be the individual person. And that the primary purpose of education is the integral formation of the human person, the fullest development of everything that is human in the individual. And lastly, where our vision mission has been hinged, that the university fulfills its role best when it forms individuals who are professionally competent, creative, and enterprising, zealous for the common good, and capable of making free and morally upright choices, and who can thus act as positive agents of change in the service of society. So this vision of the university has its focus on the human development and integral formation. Okay. So as you can see in the map, our university went through a business process exercise. And what came out of that is that we developed what we call the student journey. Isn't it? When a student comes to your university, one of the ways by which you want the student to really be successful is for you to see that the student has graduated from your university. But that is not just the point. We just don't want to make our students graduate from our university, but we want them to be holistically formed. So when a student once a student has been recruited, admitted, and registered, now it's the task of the Student Affairs, Center for Student Affairs, to form the students from the time that he gets in, the university goes through the baccalaureate years up to masteral program, and then when he graduates, he has all those virtues, values necessary for the person to be competent and to be able to achieve the highest form of well-being. So all the dimensions are supposed to be harnessed as he goes along the university life. And so as the dimensions are being addressed, we have in CSA our mandate, and that is, this is our vision, that the Center for Student Affairs is a guardian of the student value chain, and the hallmark of which is the values formation, the hallmark of the UNP, is promoted through the holistic formation of the students by a cultivation of the university life outside the classroom. So everything that happens outside the classroom is a venue for the formation of their skills and competence, and not only that, the values education and values formation. So it effectively complements the academic course of study. So our next question is that how do we ensure that this vision is carried out through our services and programs? How can we measure its effectiveness and impact on students' holistic development? And has there been any measure that has been developed along this line? So this is what we want to know, whether the units that we have and its program can deliver all the services and activities meant to address the different dimensions of well-being. So these are the units under the Center for Student Affairs: Office of Career Services, Guidance and Counseling, sports development, student mentoring, and student services. So the first step, as you all know, no, in scale development is to be able to survey first the students' perception of wellness on the following dimensions: physical, spiritual, intellectual, psychological, social, and emotional dimensions. We have taken this measure from the from a group of authors who conceived or who developed this scale perceived wellness survey. We did not stop at that. We also wanted to know um, we would also like to employ a measure on flourishing in order to know whether our students are optimally functioning at this point. No? So we didn't just want to know the perception of the students from their own point of view, but we wanted to know which dimension students think they can flourish in, or whether they are living within their optimal range of human functioning. Okay, so I think you're eager to know the results of our study. So my co-presenter, Concha, shall be here to discuss with you the findings.
Thank you, Ses. So I'll share with you the initial results of the study, which we only piloted to a small group of our student leaders and volunteers. So when we ran the survey, we had a total of 75 student leaders and volunteers. In other words, students who are already in contact with student affairs. So we had an average of 20 years old. And we also asked them, how long have you been in touch with student affairs, at least in UANP? So we had some students who just entered as freshmen. So we had months of involvement in student affairs, and students who have been with us for 4 years. In other words, throughout their stay in the university, they have been involved in some of our projects. We also asked the students to identify which units they have been involved in, and this is how they answered. So most of them have been in touch with our guidance and counseling office, not as clients, but because they volunteered in some of our projects as peer counselors, and also our guidance and counseling office is on top of arranging our freshman orientation programs and other support activities with our university counselors. So student services is about institutional activities and support for our scholars. And then student development is organizations and leadership programs, sports development, mentoring, and then career services. So I'll show you what the numbers look like. We just took a simple mean just to rank the dimensions. So our students ranked the highest, the spiritual dimension. So the scoring in PWS is 6 is the highest score. So we wanted to know which dimension of wellness they scored the highest. So highest is spiritual, lowest is emotional dimension. I'll talk about it later, why those things came out. And then the flourishing measure came out this way. So our students ranked social relationships with the highest score. The scoring for flourishing measure is 10 as the highest. So here they showed low social relationships as the highest dimension, and the lowest is financial and material stability. So we put the ranking side by side, and then we can see that our students consistently place a lot of importance on their spiritual well-being. There can be many things we can say about it as a cultural group, as Filipinos, but also I think as growing adolescents. So we acknowledge that our students are slowly growing in maturity, and therefore consider this aspect to be very material to their well-being. And aside from this, we can also see that they put premium on their social relationships, enjoying the various social networks they have in school, and this is very essential to their well-being. At the bottom of the rankings are students' physical and mental health. Maybe the demands in school do not give much time for students to move around a lot, and financial and material stability only because most of them are not yet employed. So perhaps this could be explained by the various challenges that our students face in university, not just as students, but as persons. Okay. So after we did the survey, we ran a series of focus group discussions to see how we can make sense of those numbers that we got. So we conducted 4 sessions with our students, choosing them from among the people who answered the survey. So the ones who received our invitation, accepted our invitation were 2nd to 4th year students. Their involvements ranged from being in student government, varsity, peer facilitators, student organization leaders, people who volunteer for our civic and outreach programs, and we have a student assistance program composed of our scholars. So that's their service to the university. So the FGD sessions helped us provide the answers to the questions that we wanted to answer in this initial study. So the first question that we wanted to explore was to find out how our student volunteers described well-being in terms of the different dimensions. So in this question, where am I? Okay. So in the next slides, I will show you the descriptions that our students provided. So we talked about the different dimensions one by one, and we wanted them to share what they think of these different dimensions. We put these indicators side by side with the initial definitions provided by our student affairs practitioners, in other words, us in student affairs, and how we saw those aspects of well-being, and see if our ideas aligned. So we'll go through them one by one, I think, with the time element. So first, physical development. So in physical development, our students confirm and they acknowledge that a healthy lifestyle, these choices that they make are essential to maintaining good physicality, to be able to manage the multiple demands of school and everything else that they do in their life as as adolescents. So they acknowledge that academic life can be very stressful. That came out a lot in the focus group discussions, all the things that they were worried about. But they knew that an active body will help keep a sound mind. So the physical dimension is very important. In terms of the social dimension, our students recognized that quality friendship and strong support systems are essential to their well-being. In fact, this is confirmed because this was the highest rating in the flourishing measure. So they meet a lot of people in the university coming from all walks of life, and they see the need to be able to deal with these diverse personalities in an authentic, empathetic, and healthy manner. So that word comes out a lot in our discussions, boundaries. I think young people like to use that word a lot. And then moving on to the spiritual dimension. So this, in our FGDs, this section usually takes up a lot of time. So they have a lot to share in this dimension. So our students find value in maintaining a relationship with God. So a good number of our students are Catholics and Christians in our university. So for most of them, spirituality is staying true to one's religious beliefs and applying these beliefs in their words and actions. But a lot of the students also acknowledge that spirituality goes beyond being religious. No? So it involves finding a strong sense of purpose, and one of the practices that they do is to engage in a lot of reflection. The mental dimension focuses on students' approaches to dealing with academic demands in school. So the students see that the value of academic excellence is an important goal, and there are many values that they need to acquire to be able to achieve that goal: diligence, discipline, intellectual humility, academic integrity, resilience, and most importantly, an openness to learning beyond the classroom. From a psychological perspective, the students realize the importance of self-awareness, emotional maturity, and an optimistic mindset. So our students acknowledge that they go through a lot of difficult things while in school, but that they are capable of responding to these adversities and challenges. So we're happy to note, seen in the last point, that our students' help-seeking behaviors have improved over time. They acknowledge that they need help, and even if our counselors are swamped with a lot of our students, just to listen to them and talk to them, we're happy that they're seeing us in student affairs. And lastly, professional well-being, which is not found directly in all of these measures, but in student affairs, professional development is a valuable contribution to complement the preparation that our students get from their curricular programs. So in this case, our students affirm that being professional entails excellence at work and in one's behavior. So these initial indicators provided by the students will be very helpful to the next steps of our research, which will be mentioned in closing by Dr. Says. So the second to the last question that we also wanted to see was were about the programs and services addressing these well-being dimensions. So we asked the students to reflect, what activities or programs have you been part of that you think concretely contributed to your well-being? So the purpose of that question was to see which of our existing student affairs programs have been meaningful to them in terms of from a personal level and from a professional level, but also to see how our other programs can replicate such contribution. So here are some of the programs that they mentioned. So there are a lot of these, and they are specific to our university. So what we wanted to share with you today is that in these programs, apart from the skills that our students acquire as volunteers or as leaders in the student affairs programs, our students see that the unique value added by their participation are addressed to several interrelated aspects of well-being. So these different student affairs programs have targeted aspects of student development or well-being. But in the end, when they form part of these programs, they inevitably impact other aspects of well-being. So it's just not one aspect that is being addressed or targeted. And the last point that we wanted to see was about how our students defined well-being, okay, from their perspective as active participants in our programs. So in this question, we asked them, our students saw the direct relationship of well-being with our university's motto, which is Unitas. So that's the motto of our university. So Unitas means committing to excellence in all aspects of life, not just being an A student or be an active athlete or leader, and just like in well-being, it means ensuring optimal functioning in all aspects, where one dimension is given as much importance as the other dimension. So this is what our university education aims for in terms of our students' well-being. So to conclude our presentation, I'll give the floor back to Ces for some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Concha. By the way, Concha is a graduate of our university, so she embodies the well-being dimension of, and this is a proof of of the effectivity of the program, isn't it? So, since we come to the concluding remarks, no, we realize several insights, no, that gave way to being like student affairs practitioners, listening from the insights and from the feedback of the students themselves. It has really been so enriching, no? That student affairs practitioners are the unsung heroes, that we are behind the formation of the students who go through the university life in our own campuses. But what is really striking is that they embody the mission of the university and the vision that has been that has to be carried out in their whole university life. No, so so after completing this initial phase of study, gathering the indicators of well-being from the perspective of the student volunteers and the student affairs professionals, we have arrived at this following insights. First, we realized that educational contexts have an important role in supporting the students' total and integral development, that the interventions and programs undertaken have the potential to influence a range of social, spiritual, and psychological outcomes. For instance, good physical health of a person not only optimizes a student's academic performance, but also increases her ability to cope with stressors in life, and if successfully met, becomes a positive agent in the society. Um, Sorry. And then next, developing well-being points to a synergistic and interconnected process in which developing one dimension leads to the growth of another dimension. The student's well-being is facilitated by an environment that promotes growth in all aspects of development, seeing to it that the programs we deliver in student affairs are conceptualized and delivered with the intentionality of promoting all dimensions of well-being. So that is one aspect that we saw, that in any program that we deliver to the students, we have to have at the back of our mind developing our students undergoing the program all the dimensions that we have shown you. No? And then the third, the concept of well-being and flourishing can be best understood from a developmental perspective, seeing to it that the person develops over time from quote-unquote being to becoming one indivisible self. No? So we just look at a one whole person without being divided, but all dimensions are being put into place. Okay? So down to my last slide, what should be our next steps? Since it's an initial attempt to develop a measure on well-being, we want to pursue two tasks after these initial findings. First, to conceptualize a student well-being model, and from which a student well-being measure will be derived. Okay, so I leave you with our references, and then thank you very much. Kasamhamnida.
Thank you, Cecilia and Concha. That was excellent and there was a lot of information there. We probably have time for one question from colleagues, if anyone has a question. I guess you're off the hook for questions. Oh, we have one. Okay. Oh, two. Okay. The lady at the front.
This wellness and well-being is very close to my heart. It's also a presentation I'm doing, and I'm more interested in how these findings are conveyed to the academic community, and how do they utilize this in their better understanding of students' performance.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so the initial results have not been communicated yet to the academic programs, but the surveys that we usually do in the university are reported to the programs. So they're furnished a copy of the other measures that we've done over the years to report on the aspects of their programs. So it's either the curriculum, the teachers, how the support programs within the academic courses are given. But this initial study has not yet been communicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed the presentation. Just requesting you to shed a little more light, your second last slide, where you shared with us you mentioned 6 determinant regarding a student, how they see their well-being. I think you made reference to their own families, the schools they go to, and the community they come from. But I was attracted to hearing 3 more. You made reference to 6. Would you add the other 3?
School and community. No, these are the 3 aspects. Okay. So these 3 environments help in the well-being of a student: the family, the school, and the community. So the question, sir, is how, in the context of well-being, how can these factors or environmental systems be able to help in the well-being of the students? So, did I get you right? Sure.
Yes, that's extremely important in terms of appreciating the same child we focus on. Maybe you could add the other three, which may include the child themselves
Okay.
and the peers they associate with. And I think the third one could be a governance system in our respective countries.
Yes. Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
That's a wonderful suggestion, incorporating all the other factors and systems that would be in play in the development of the well-being. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Cecilia and Concha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
So we're now going to welcome Beatrice Wong and Eva Schreck from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, who are going to talk to us about peer-to-peer connection and support. And I'm just going to pause for a second while you find the presentation there.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beatrice. I'm from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and I'm the Learning and Development Manager. And I have my partner with us. We work together, that's what I mean. We have Eva.
Hi. Hi, everyone. This is Eva. So Beatrice and I lead this program called Ripples Fellowship Program, and we'll be sharing some of that, of our learnings and findings with you soon.
So both Eva and I, we work in the same team. And about 3 years ago, we came together to work on the same project because we share the same vision. So we believe that each life creates endless ripples. What does that mean? So rather than me telling you, I would like to bring you a story of one of our students who joined our program. So let's call this student Wally. And so if any one of you is quite familiar with this characteristic, later on we'll tell you a bit more. So Wally is from the School of Engineering. 3 years ago, he entered in our university, and during that time, it was in the, we're deep in the COVID. And before that, Hong Kong with some social movement. So when he got in our university, the first thing he did is he felt really lost. So he joined one of our programs that we prepared for our first year student, and it's called self-leadership. And this is one of the first things that he recognized and representing his feeling being a first year student. Because we asked all of the first year students one question. So if this is the university, are you be able to identify where are you and who are you? So this is how Wally suddenly have a question for himself. That's right. Who am I? Even with or without COVID, this is something that will really, stuck in me if I do not find that out when I graduate. So from this program, Wally found out that, the first things I might need to find out more is who am I, what is my characteristic and uniqueness. And he thought, oh, do I need to do this alone? And through this program, even though we were doing it online, it's a semester-long program. So he managed to make some friends. So Wally was thinking, okay, this is great, even though, have you ever seen one of the picture showing that you have two islands, look separate on the surface, but underneath, you're actually connected. He sort of felt like that when he's joining this program. And just FYI, we are HKUST University of Science and Technology, but our credibility, among students, they call themselves, we are coming from the University of Stress and Tension. Yeah, and lately I heard something even worse. They said it's single and toxic. So we were thinking about it's not good at all. We want to rebrand that. And when Wally knew about the reputation, he thought, absolutely, I cannot associate myself with that kind of branding. So he took that opportunity to join the self-leadership focus group because we wanted to get some student feedback about what they thought about the program. And he also stepped in to join one of our co-creation program. During that time in our university, we're thinking about, okay, is not just the university staff, but the student is facing COVID as well. So why don't we come together and do something about it? If you're interested in more about the co-creation part, go to, I think it's 4A session tomorrow. Our head of co-curricular program, Helen, is going to share more, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. So Wally joined that program, and this is what he ran through a little bit. So you see Wally? So during that time, he was collaborating with some of the staff, and we also invited some other students to join the program. And then they went through a really interesting process to co-create what they really wanted. So he joined other students to share what they think would be really helpful for them to go through that period. So we did something like this. So they have brainstorming together about what do they really need in the university. So after so much brainstorming, and then they find out there's 4 things is missing. First of all is the relationships, or something even deeper is connection. Because you can be able to know someone but have no connection with them, and what they really want is connection. The other thing is way on how do they able to de-stress because they feel so stressful academically, and also the anxiety caused by the COVID. And also the space to explore the future. Because they feel if GPA is the only thing that will measure my success, that will be too limited. They really want some other kind of measurement to know they can shine and show their talent. And finally, they are not quite sure what kind of skills they were missing. So they will be able to identify these different types of need, and then they narrow down some ideas, and that picture shows what are the projects that they could brainstorm and thinking that will be able to rebrand HKUST. So they gave us a lot of ideas. And now I would like to hand it to Eva to introduce to us what's next.
Thank you, Beatrice. Let me try. Okay, so after getting the ideas from students, we went back to the drawing board and had to buckle down and then turn this into a real program. And some of that requires us to match their needs with our mission. And we are from the Dean of Students' Office. Particularly, our function is developing co-curricular programs, which is roughly anything related to their non-academic development, their whole person development. In that sense, we want to provide them with all sorts of opportunities to basically find their unique contribution in the world. How do I fit in? Who am I? And where do I want to go next? We use a lot of what we call advising, which is basically giving students feedback on their learning as a means of driving their growth. So with that came Ripples. So the Ripples Fellowship Program brought to us the student need of, I really want to express care and concern, support for my friends. But I struggle to know how. I struggle because I fear that whatever I say will aggravate, make it worse for my friends. So at the end, I choose silence. And then the tension builds up. So we wanted to, when we went back to, when we discussed this together, we thought about, hey, so why don't we choose one thing that's very common among all ages, all cohorts, all study programs, and that is we want to change our conversations with each other. Let us start there. And that is where Ripples came about. But we want to do it in a different way. We wanted to give them some practical tools. So among all the different tools that's around, we chose the peer coaching model. And very roughly, it's called the LAAD model. We won't be going into the details. If you have any questions about it, feel free to ask us later on. Of course, we believe that all learning needs consolidation and it needs articulation. So with that, we do require students to do a self-reflection and get feedback from us. And of course, hopefully we give them some incentives to turn their concerns, their needs, what they've learned into real action and hopefully create that change they want to see. So with that, we give them funding to initiate programs to support their peers. So in our program itself, these are snapshots of the activities that we have conducted over the past 3 years. Some of them are outdoors, some of them are indoors, and what you will see is they are constantly interacting and having conversations with each other according to different learning components. And of course, we require them to put down some of their immediate reflections as a team or little groups or as a big class afterwards. We do give them opportunities to apply what they learned into real life scenarios. So we take the effort to talk to students and develop scenarios for the role plays. Because peer coaching is just a theory if you don't practice, just like conversations. So that's why we develop those scenarios according to their needs, and then we take them through a series of activities. What happened? Let's go back to Wally. Hopefully you still remember him. After coming up with this curriculum, what Wally did was like, Beatrice was like, hey, we finally got the program figured out. We're ready to roll. So we invited Wally back for our pilot run. And that was in the fall semester of 2021, when Hong Kong is still kind of like struggling a little bit. Continue after that, after joining us for the pilot program, Wally stayed with us because he's interested in giving back. So we started entering our residential halls to conduct also the same program for the residents as well as their hall tutors who are postgraduate students. And of course, then Wally continued to set up his own team as Ripple's leaders to launch his project with our funding and advising. And his role basically slowly turned from a participant to a facilitator as part of the workshop. And you see his growth throughout the years as his responsibilities changes and the impact he is able to achieve grows. So these are some of the activities that he has initiated. Leading his team is Wally here, Wally there. So this is all scattered around the fifth wave of COVID pandemic in Hong Kong as well. So that's why some of them are still maxed up. And you see him facilitating some conversation games as well as using some tools to understand each other's personalities. And he also stepped in to support our facilitation and hosted interactions with students who are, for example, one of the scenarios we did was for how do you facilitate a conversation with a first-year student who's struggling to keep up with their responsibilities? How would you approach that conversation? That was something that he did as a facilitator. Moving on. This one-pager with around 10 to 15 photos captures our 3-year journey together. And what we want to share with you is that even though it's only one page, it shows our iteration of multiple rounds from a 2-day intensive workshop to a 2-month workshop series. We have designed for an in-person approach of workshop. COVID smashed that plan and forced us to turn it online, and later kind of hybrid. Then it took us through the seasons as well, so you see them wearing long sleeves and short sleeves. And of course, most importantly of all, you see them with mask on and now mask off. Altogether, up to today, we have launched 8 cohorts since, and 158 students there. Together, they've been able to outreach 400 more students through the application of what they have learned as a Ripple's member. And by the way, they are also from all study years, from all 4 schools, and our interdisciplinary studies as well. It's called the Academy of Interdisciplinary Studies over there. And it simply shows that that need to understand how, that need to develop a connection with others is unanimous across disciplines and across their experiences. we'd like to share with you what students think about the program, because you have heard enough from me. And actually, by the way, we've brought Wally here, not just us. So let's introduce him to you.
Hello from HKUST. 大家好. This is Plato, aka Wally. I was part of the co-creation program in 2021. So later, when Ripples piloted, I got invited to join as a participant. HKUST students come from different schools, and it can be difficult to connect beyond our academic experiences. A lot of students are discouraged by the stereotypes around their identities, and we're hesitant to reach out. So Summer and I share a common interest in exploring people's personality, and we begin to brainstorm what we can do to get students outside of their box. So we formed a student team called Break the Barriers, and we started organizing events to bring students together from
Give us a moment. So, can you help us exit? We can't exit yet. Can you help us exit?
from different backgrounds, and we do it with deeper conversations without labels. Three years has gone by since Ripple started, and Summer and I are both graduating this year. Looking back, Ripple's really changed the way I connect with my friends. I love to talk with people and encourage one another to find their goals. Head, heart, and hand model is something that I will never forget. I'm now aware of the importance of building a community. It's not just an effort of one party. Everyone can reach out and connect in the way we like.
You know, when we prepare this presentation and when we finally can call him Plato, no longer call him Wally. What really make Eva and I reflect about is what a student actually share. Connecting with people is not just one party to do it. It's not just us. And why we do Ripples to help to enhance student wellness, because I think different community in the campus can do different things. And we use the approach by doing the peer coaching conversation is because Eva and I are a strong believer about to change relationship, you need to change your conversation. And coaching approach is to focus on the person to build connection. It's not just about problem solving. Problem solving try to put us in a situation that we only have a transactional relationship. When there's a need, we come together. And when the project, for example, the student group project is over, then the relationship just break. So it's give and take. However, peer coaching conversation require you, one of the important skills is listening. Before you speak, maybe listen first. And that really help people to connect. And we were surprised, but also very pleased to see students really pick up that bit really quickly. And they can see they have an opportunity to be the ripples, that drop of water, and then to start to influence their community. And in our program, as you can see, the focus is more about we enable students to be that key drop of water in whatsoever community that they are in. Because honestly, when students struggles, the first person they go to is not us. You can't find them. You notice they're everywhere. However, the first person they might go to is their friends. So that is why we found that it's not just Plato, but many people as students, they are actually quite ready to want to help their friends. And beyond that, so we started to think, okay, maybe we can use this to enable more students to reach out their friends. And that impact will be much bigger than we wrote a big program to have everyone to come in to get trained. So these are some of the other feedback we also got from our students after the joining Ripples. What do they think about the program? I think, so quite a lot of them think that that program create a safe space for them to discuss something that they experience every single day, but they do not really have the chance to talk about. And I think this is providing a safe environment for people to express their emotions, their situation is really important as a student wellness. So that's one of the feedback. The other part is they do have a sense of fulfillment that they feel through a conversation, at least I can make my friend's day better. maybe not the best, but I have the ability to make others people's life better. And I think that really helped them to build the confidence and see the value of building connection with others. And finally, because we are from the science and technology, people normally will have a stereotype, oh, we talk about data a lot. We love talking about those kind of things. We do, but we're also only human. So our program also provides them to have more space to express the human part, the emotions. I think all of us have gone through COVID. It's not easy, and they were only at their early 20s. So I think we are happy that that program rolled out to give them that space to do it. And to conclude a little bit that program, it is really a great opportunity that we see. We thought the Ripples Fellowship Program is for individuals, as for students. But we sort of also found out it's not just that, because what comes next is really surprise us, and we would like to continue to work on that. It become a strategy for us to build a bigger initiative behind, which is to build a community. We started to co-create with students, and we attracted quite a number of different departments, and student society come to collaborate with us because they do see this is something that we want. Can you provide it for us? To roll a lot more collaboration, and right now, based on what Ripples have built as a foundation, we have a new program called Community Builders. Because after COVID, when everyone go back to face-to-face, sort of like a post-pandemic situation, in our university, different parties are using their own way to try to rebuild the community. So rather than doing it one by one or very silently to do that, why don't we do it together? So we have lots of discussion with different colleagues from other departments to understand what are their struggles, what are their student needs. I think one of the beauty about community is to let the community itself to discover what they cares about. And that create a lot of great and meaningful conversation for us to do a lot of collaboration. And so we integrate the program from Ripples to Community Builders. So based on what we decided for Ripples, we have something more that we can offer to students. Because I think in different schools and university, they have their peer mentorship program. They already have a student teams that are already serving students. But when we talk to them, most of the time they say, oh, my mentee don't come to me unless they want to choose major. Then they may come to talk to me. Or which professor is easy to get a good grade. That kind of conversation. They do want to help more, but they might not know how to. So we rolled out this program. We call it a plug-in program. What does that mean is, based on the need of the department or the student team that they work on, we change and customize the program for them to train their student. That leaves us that flexibility. But most of the time, we focus on these three things. First of all, rather than they nurture a competitive mindset, we nurture them a community mindset. What does that mean is, competitive is, well, the student sitting right next to me, maybe is my competitor, so no connection. But community is more about win-win. So we really want students to change their view about their peer relationship. And the other thing is we want to help them to find a common language. What does that mean is, well, right now we speak in English because everyone understands it. However, when we talk about development, do they have a common language to express what do they want to develop? So we incorporate a psychometric tool called Luminous Spark. We get them to do that so that they will have a vocabulary to tell people, this is what I want to develop. Would you like to do this together to express what are their needs? And we will also incorporate this tool in this program to guide the student leaders when they talk to their mentees or other their peers. We want them to focus on explore these four things. We call it the 4S model. Try to figure out what are their inner spark, what do they want to do, not just your academically, but what are your dreams and passion. Secondly, what are your strengths? A student do not know their strengths. They feel, oh, I don't know what to do when I have to experience the setback. But once you help them to find out their strengths, it increases their resilience as well. They can name it. And finally, also talk about stress. I think it's easy to talk about stress, but it's not easy to talk it in a constructive way. So we want to equip students, how are you going to express stress constructively? Understand what triggers you. So we also use other tools to help them to have that conversation. And finally, we also show students a way, if you want to support other people, what can you do about that? So this is, I would say, starting from Ripples, but now we're on a journey rather than only equipping individual, but we are on the way to want to spread it as a community. So we piloted this academic year. In fall 2023, we started with the student resident hall tutors because obviously residents, they're a big community in the campus. So we piloted with them. We received very good feedback because even their hall tutors, they do not have connection with other people. So they feel this program is very useful. And we also introduced this to student ambassadors and peer mentors, in different departments as well. And the feedback were really well received. So this is the journey, how it goes. And moving forward, in the upcoming summer, a lot of them requested they want new hall tutors. They come to enroll in this program. So Eva and I are pretty excited that we thought it was just a COVID response, but now we hope we can be able to work on it as a more sustainable way to enable students to support student wellness and let them to play a part. So just to wrap up our presentation, we would just quickly show you what is our learning from this journey. So mainly 3 things. Firstly, we found that it is very important to collaborate with other people by telling them we can be able to collaborate because we have the resources so that we can be able to help them. Because we have secured some funding and also donation that will be able to involve a third party to help them to conduct some team buildings, etc. And one of my job in my university is I'm also a learning and development trainer. So I can be able to help them to train their students because in department, most of the staff, they need to focus on academic advising or administration. They might not have the capacity to do that, but they can collaborate with us to do it. So secondly, is priority. I think for students, they might think that building relationship, my wellness is not that important compared to studies. We really hope, we think that this program is slowly to change their perspective and let them to see the value. And finally, is the sustainability. What does that mean is we need to identify more Wallies. It's not just one Plato. We know that there are a lot more students want to do it. So it's not just we roll out the program, get the stat done, but we're also observing who are the people, who are the students, who are the staff we can collaborate with to keep this continue. So Eva and I, these 4 questions we have been keeping in mind since we started the program is what kind of station is missing in the campus that to get them to have a happy life. Secondly, where are the Wallies? Thirdly, who are the people that we can partner with to keep ripple out the impact? And finally, how to build the capacity in everyone's busy schedule. So that would be that, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beatrice and Eva. That was great and really showed the power of storytelling. I think we know Plato/Wally very well after that. And I think it was a great representation of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. I'm sure it's not really single and toxic. And your recruitment and marketing people would want to say it's not single and toxic, I'm sure. So any questions?
Hi, so my question is, how did you create and start the program with buy-in from students when you first started? So how did you market this? How did you kind of create kind of like a informational session so students knew that this was an opportunity when you first started?
So I would say that there's a 2-way. First of all, Plato wasn't the only person joined the co-creation program. We roughly have around 8 to 10 students joining in the co-creation. So they really interested, wanting to say, oh, we give you input, so what is the output? So they were quite interested to join the program. And the other one is that before we roll out, we identify some of the student teams. They already have that need, so we directly invite them to collaborate to run the pilot. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I think it's important to understand that it's not one size fits all. So even if you have partners who are not sold on getting signed on a 2-month workshop series, then you try to ask them to see if they send in some mature students who can test it out for them. And that takes us to the next step.
One more question? At the back.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I would like some information on how you actually instilled cooperation because among the students, because the university as a setting is a very competitive space. Thank you.
So during the workshop, we don't talk about anything academic, but want them to bring down to we are just a student, a human being. So during the practice, we purposefully put the discussion questions. That is not much related to the academic stuff. And the other thing, we plug in a tool that we mentioned a little bit, the Lumina. Surprisingly, I think just not them, maybe for us as well. I think when I was young, people talk about horoscope. Suddenly just got interest, oh my God, we're on the same side. And then people start the conversation. And then for them, they have a sophisticated tool to understand about different color energy. They start the conversation. And when people start to have connection, they perceive the relationship differently. And I think for students, they're lacking the perspective and knowledge how to talk about different topic. Because they are very good in talking, in sharing or discussing tangible stuff, but relationship for them is very conceptual. So in the program, we give them different types of conversation topic for them to feel why when we talk about this, we don't feel we are competing with each other, but we have what we share in common that would create the collaboration.
By competitive mindset, it's not only among students, but also across departments. We always want to kind of be the program who gets most popular among the students or get a lot of the best kind of engaging students, right? Sometimes when you roll something out, you have to compete with existing ones. That's why community builders is different because it's a plug-in. We support existing programs by understanding their need and we give them what they need in terms of training and engagement. So this is a way for us to contribute without competing as well. Hopefully we can win together.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you very much. And now we're going to welcome Dr. Dwayne Hunt, the Dean of Students from the American University of Antigua, talking to us about medical student support in the Caribbean. So we're just going to put the presentation up and then over to Dwayne.
Thank you. So we'll give it a few seconds here while we load up the PowerPoint. Thank you. I think I got it this time. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Good. Well, today we'll be talking about protective factors and offshore medical students attending a school in the Caribbean, in particular medical school. So, you'll find out that just because they're in medical school and they have the same issues that some of our other students tend to have. So I think people just take on the title and fall into the role appropriately. So we'll get into it. American University of Antigua is where I'm from, is where I work. Just a little point a bit, it's in the Caribbean. And for those who are not sure where the Caribbean is, it's the United States of America. Top there and just down below, you'll see Florida, Panhandle, and you'll see Caribbean nations in there. And one of them says Antigua and Barbuda. And that's where American University of Antigua is. Now, in the Caribbean, there's a number of institutions that offer medical education. Now, in the United States, of course, medical education exists. But a number of students opt to come down to the Caribbean, and they attend a number of different medical schools. American University of Antigua is just one of them, and these are just a few of the other institutions there that's located in the Caribbean. So, each year, there's about 55,000 people that apply for to be in a medical education program in the United States. They only accept 22,700. So there's plenty of seats that are filled, and students are looking for some place to go. Some students hang around and may apply the following year, get some more clinical experience, and then continuously try to get into a US-based medical school. Some of them find that it's better for them to apply for medical education in the Caribbean. Now, we have a number of students who would apply for medical education, recognizing that statistically, students who ultimately they want to get into a residency program, right? So there's medical schools everywhere. What you tend to find why they may attend a school in the Caribbean, a US-based offshore medical school, is so they can prepare to get into residency, US residency programs. 67% of US citizens attending a US program are placed. For students who are attending the offshore schools, they tend to find about 50% of students tend to find a residency. So they kind of take that bet there that it's possible for them, and so they come down. Now, there's always questions about, well, why do you want to go to a school in the Caribbean besides sunshine, warm water, tasty food, and you can name a bunch of other benefits. But you will find that a lot of people will criticize these institutions. There were questions about their accreditations and so forth. And yes, because of the less regulations that exist for a number of institutions, you can get all types of quality. But those who do have the quality institution have certain certifications, because you wouldn't be able to get student loans to help pay for your education if you don't have the National Committee of Foreign Medical Education and Accreditation. You would not be able to get into a residency program if you're not recognized by ECFMG. And so a number of the institutions that I named already are recognized, have local and regional accreditation, but they're also recognized by these institutions. So a number of students, being medical students, would do their research and decide this is what they want to do. All right. So some of the critics would think about medical education in the Caribbean. The perception that students are less able than graduates in US medical schools. And we find that to be untrue. Because so many of them do place into residencies, and those that are established have great reputations, right? Geographical and social isolation, believing that because they're isolated and they may not be able to get the ability to work with others in other medical schools and clinical sites that are beneficial. So they believe they may have decreased opportunities for development. Less emphasis on practical skills and small group learning. These are important things for medical education, and believe that maybe it's just too much emphasis on didactic learning, just lectures. And an important part here is really lack of social accountability. Again, some of the critics would talk about their accreditation pieces. So we're going to dive a bit now into really about what's informed this particular process, this conversation, and what would be the study that will come from it. So obviously we're looking at resilience. And so looking at the different literature, recognizing there is a gap, but in order to find the gap in the literature, you really should go through the literature to find out if there's a gap that does exist. So we talked about stress and burnout with medical education. We talked about influence of personal factors on resilience. We talked about supportive interventions for first-year medical students, dynamic nature of resilience. Just like the growth mindset, there's a belief that you're just not born with resilience. It's not dispositional, but it can grow, and you can become resilient. Impact of social and cultural factors. medical education and offshore schools, and also additional guidance. Actually, that informs this conversation is the questionnaires, focus groups, and other piece regarding research that helps here. So, in those who apply for medical education or attend, about 64% are from North America. That means they're either from Canada or from the United States. About 17% Asia. So that would include India and other, which is probably the primary student population. We'll also have students from Africa and also from other nations. Student population, you'll find that a large percentage of students that would attend are actually Black African American students. So I have about 34% of the population that actually makes up that population. And then actually we have Asian, that's about 29%. Again, disaggregated, focus more on Indian population. White population is about 19%. Latinx population is about 10%, and other. But we do always find that we have a large female enrollment, about 58 to 60% across the region. So, pretty much what we will focus on is really highlighting the protective factors. Talking about what students do, what do they apply to offset risk factors. But also, what do institutions do to help to make sure that students build a certain level of resilience and that they're able to maintain and persist with their education. So there are a bunch of non-cognitive factors that are predictors of success. But this particular focus and study is really on resilience and stress management. So we'll spend a great deal of time talking about that because that's what the particular focus of the study will look at. Nomenclature. So you already heard me talking about risk factors. So risk factors are challenges that can offset your goal. So your goal is to complete your medical education, and you have a risk factor that exists. And so, how do you offset that particular risk factor? By utilizing protective factors. And the utilization of protective factors, which you put in place, also helps offset the challenges. Integration and combining various protective strategies effectively is an important thing to do. Recognition and adaptation also about when you're having a particular obstacle, and then what to apply, what particular strategies, etc. And also, success is really sustained achievement. We want to see that done. So in the literature gap, you'll find that over in recent years, especially in higher education, there's been a lot of conversations about resilience. When I worked on my doctorate, it wasn't so much conversation. It was more about persistence, how to ten-toe, etc. But when you're talking about resilience in higher education now, that has since grown a bit. However, doesn't always apply to, and it does apply to medical education, but it doesn't apply necessarily to this particular student population. Offshore students, or students who attend offshore institutions in the Caribbean for medical education. So, in the literature, there are three things that really popped up and are really, that talks about support systems and human connection. Fostering peer connection for mental well-being, implementing a structured support system, and addressing the challenges through collaborative networks. So you find that throughout the literature there. And yes, there are challenges. Attrition is between 25 and 35% during your preclinical years for students who attend school in the Caribbean. 65% of the students withdraw for reasons other than academics. Personal reasons is the number one reason. 33%. So students have personal issues. Now, you're away from home. You may not feel supported. A lot of things are happening. And therefore, students will say, on our withdrawal survey, as we review this information, this is my primary reason for leaving. But sometimes they go a little deeper. And those who go deeper, sometimes will say, well, 17% will say family. So sometimes family is not a protective factor. Sometimes they are a risk factor, right? They can derail you from your education. And oftentimes we do have students who bring children to medical school. They bring the loved ones, etc., to take care of them. They become caregivers, and that derails their education. 16% medical issues. Sometimes they bring those medical issues with them. And we don't always have the same resources that they may get from the mainland in Canada or in the United States. 14% would say financial. Medical school is expensive. I often tell students it's an expensive proposition. It's expensive overall, mentally, emotionally, and also financially. So some students will say, agree with me, and they would not be able to continue. Only about 12% will say it's because I couldn't cut it academically. All right? And then we have those who want to change careers, and some say others. So in the research questions that have come up, really, again, we talked about protective factors and how do students utilize to manage the academic and personal challenges of studying abroad. How do these factors influence their academic performance and well-being? And what role does the institution play in supporting these students? And how can we enhance and support them? So, some of the things that when I talked about risk factors, there's 3 types of risk factors. There's dispositional, which focus on the individual, what they are made from. You know, what do they have or are they inclined from? They're born with it, maybe they developed it later, but it's dispositional. And so, we'll talk about familial, we'll talk about environmental. But in the dispositional risk factors, these are things that students are highlighted, especially when we did our focus groups. The lack of readiness, medical and mental health issues, out of alignment with realistic expectations. What they thought medical school was not what it is. Or what they thought the community or an environment is not what it is. Lack of time management and organizational skills, and sometimes just making poor choices. And these are some of the things that they will highlight to say that can help them to be successful. But since I believe in an anti-deficit perspective, I also like to think about what could the institution do. So would you have any suggestions for me about pretty much what could the institution do to offset some of the risk factors that exist for someone whose disposition is challenged? So any suggestions for me or suggestions to the group? Yes.
Attitude plays a very big role, and the collaborative, the engagement with academics is very important. So we do wellness intervention, but we sit on decision-making committees, where those committees are making decisions on continued registration, suspension, exclusion, etc., etc. These are what we would refer to as non-academic, outside the classroom factors impacting students' progression. Is core to student success. And when we position these factors and educate academics, they have a better understanding of why students are underperforming. So often academics are tracking marks, but not seeing the whole person sitting in the classroom. And when you see the whole person, there's a whole different perspective and a whole different approach. Now, we have successfully utilized the holistic approach to make decisions regarding student progression. So we're not just tracking marks and underperformance to say why a student has overstayed time at the university, but rather a concession for why we need to make a reasonable accommodation to support that student to actually stay because of the dispositional risk factors.
Very good. You know, and I respect that answer, especially because it's an institution taking on saying that we recognize the challenges and we're going to help educate our fellow colleagues on the matter. So.
There's also a further aspect. I think the power dynamics is at play as well, with the institution being the power and the student being the powerless, and the institution failing the student when technically they fail students by virtue of not having an appropriate infrastructure for the student.
That's right.
So I think if the institution identifies, has the foresight to look at what would be an appropriate infrastructure, an appropriate environment, that would be some way towards meeting the student halfway. Or else, using the deficit approach, we blame the student for everything.
Understood. Thank you. And so, I also want to, for the sake of time, I think you and I can have a conversation later on that particular matter. Familial risk factors that exist. Students will talk about lack of family and support. For example, some of them say, well, I'm the most educated in my family. I've graduated from my bachelor's, I got my master's, and now I'm in medical school, and people have been asking me when I'm going to be finished with school since I entered college. So not to understand that, it becomes a challenge for them. Also, not understanding their educational journey. High expectations, creating additional pressures, being caregivers, etc., financial strains, cultural expectations, either a lack of support or sometimes just high expectations and not really recognizing the challenges that exist for their particular person, their adult students, and that creates an additional strain and stress on that particular population. So, of course, these are some of the things students highlighted to kind of talk about what they could do to offset some of those particular familial risk factor, and then what it is that we can help put in place. It will be a question, but we'll save that due to a lack of time. So, one big thing, and is the environmental risk factor. And so the dynamic change when you jump on a plane and you fly down to some other place to attend school. Environmental risk factors or environment changes because you left your home environment to go to another location. And so that area that you're going to can either be a protective factor or it can be a risk factor for you. And so really recognizing that and some things that go into place and what you put into place can be helpful. Those students who would identify with us, students travel, which is very expensive. Certain times they have visa requirements that they may not stay on top of, and that kind of derails them for a semester or so forth. Being perceived as rich. They're coming from the United States and they're going down to the Caribbean. Sometimes the perception is that, all the students have money. And sometimes the local community treat them accordingly, which is not very helpful, all right? Unagreeable living conditions, limited access to health care in the way that they may need or acquire, cultural adjustments, academic resource services, etc., and general support services. So, of course, we talk about, students could put certain things in place, and I certainly believe that. But also going along with the theme that we're talking about, where this is about institutions being proactive, and also positive and engaging the students appropriately, is really about what can the institution do to really get it in the way to kind of offset some of these risks, especially the environmental risk factor, where the student is coming down for education, and then what kind of support we can put in place. So this is the presentation. There's more slides, but I understand there's a lack of time, so I'll certainly open the floor up for any questions at this point. Yes. Oh, who goes first? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I enjoyed it. I just wanted to, I'm Diana Bryan, and I'm from the University of the West Indies in Barbados. I live in Barbados, Cave Hill campus, and we do have a number of medical universities set up in Barbados. One of the things that I would like to hear more about from you, I guess, is just, and I recognize it, I see it just in terms of cultural adaptation or expectations. And I'm wondering what you do or what your university does in terms of trying to prepare students culturally how to adapt, because of course the preconceived idea is sun, sea, sand, but living the reality of it is totally different. So can you kind of give me, and whether or not there is more that you think can be done by university to prepare students for the cultural adaptation in its real sense?
Well, you know, there is, I'm gonna bring this down to the challenge that exists with, especially for institutions like this who recruit students to come down to the Caribbean. You have the academic and the student services arm that focus on the developmental piece. And then you may have the missions piece that's going to sell the idea of, you know, of the beach and the sand and everything else. So really setting realistic expectation day one. Once they're on campus, the orientation that exists, either over 2 or 3 days, and then also we expand our orientation through our educational enhancement department, through tutoring and learning. But they have them for 2 weeks, and then reinforcing that, you know, a week, you'll be like, well, I'm tired of the ocean. I've seen enough sand and I've seen enough beach. So after all that is over, you know, just recognize the culture that exists, recognize the community, recognize how you greet, recognize that it's typically sir and ma'am, good afternoon, good morning, etc. When you meet, when you go to the police department or you go to any government official, really, if you're going to their facilities, is dressing appropriately. This is not a vacation. You're going to live here for at least 2 to 3 years of your life. So how do you make this home? How do you adjust your environment? You know, AC, electricity bills are very expensive. Your university. So all these conversations is developmental. And then you have their peer ambassadors helping to reinforce that. And then you reinforce it every time they find your way to the Office of Student Affairs and they have a gripe or an issue.
We probably have time for one more question, if there is one more. I thought I saw another hand up before, but maybe not. Well, thank you very much, Dwayne. That was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So our last presenter is Mary Rose Macaran from De La Salle University in the Philippines, talking about issues around younger students and gambling, which is, of course, a growing issue for many of us on our campuses. So, Mary Rose, over to you, and thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you still okay? Don't worry, I'm the last presenter for this afternoon. Thank you very much, Ben. My name is Mary Rose Macaraan from De La Salle University in the Philippines, so you can call me Marose. So allow me to present to you my study entitled Online Problem Gambling Among Adolescents, Exploring Literature as Basis for Proposed Assessments and Interventions. This study was originally presented in one of our classes in the graduate school, which would look at the gap in literature as part of the plan for scale development, where Concha was my classmate in this class. This is actually an iterative process of zooming in and zooming out when it comes to finding out this gap. So with the increased accessibility in the use of digital technology, online gambling is now found to be a part of an adolescent's life experience. So with this, adolescents' exposure to online gambling activities has dramatically increased over the previous years, which may range from online sports betting, lottery, card games, and online gambling simulations. And exposure to these types of activities may pose significant threats to adolescents' health, which therefore warrants particular attention for appropriate assessment measures to minimize harm in young people. And later on, I'll be presenting some various tools which have been developed to assess online gambling problem among adolescents, and the use of these tools for adolescents may not be developmentally appropriate to assess problematic gambling among the youth, because originally these measures were developed for adults, which was adapted for adolescents. All right, so just to contextualize what is happening right now between adolescents engaging in gambling activities. So prevalence of adolescent problem gambling is found to be higher now among adolescents than in adults. Just to contextualize, in the Philippines, I do not know for other countries, but in the Philippines, there's a lot of billboards now advertising gambling. And people can bet for as low as 1 or 2 pesos. Yeah, and it happens in real time. Either it's simulated or there's real money involved. Okay? And even when I ride the bus or the train, I see people playing baccarat. It's on the bus. Yeah, there's an application, no? So that's the context right now of what's happening in the Philippines. And engagement in problematic gambling behaviors is used in adolescence, is used as a form of escape due to the lack of ability to resist temptation as compared to adult problem gamblers whose main motivation to gamble is to win monetary rewards. So there's a difference for reasons or purposes for engaging in gambling activities. And gambling behaviors are maintained due to existing comorbid addictions and other biologically related factors, accounting for biopsychosocial factors of the behavior. And sorry, I think I got lost. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. This one is the next. Okay. Next, okay. I am so sorry. All right. And as a critical period of development, it is crucial to immediately address gambling concerns among adolescents as a preventive measure from possible future negative consequences, such as concerns about mental health, relationships, academic performance, and financial well-being. Now, what is online gambling? Online gambling refers to activities done via an internet-connected device that allows an individual to wager or place bets on various gaming activities and receive rapid and instant feedback. And this is an activity which can be done in private, without other people knowing that you are doing that, at any given time and location. So you can do that anywhere. Now, what is the difference between problem versus pathological gambling? So problem gambling refers to the less severe form of the disorder, which is considered acute and is contextualized based on the detrimental effects of the behavior, whereas pathological gambling is a behavioral addiction that is persistent, recurring, and leads to clinically significant impairment or distress that warrants an understanding of both life experiences and psychopathological components. So the objective of this study is to discuss the current tools for assessing problem gambling among adolescents and their respective strengths and weaknesses. All right. Now, for the methodology, a narrative review is conducted to explore existing literature on adolescent online gambling behaviors. So a narrative review presents the summary findings of studies in a condensed format, which is helpful in presenting a broad perspective on a certain topic and generating insights. So a literature search was conducted using 4 databases, including PubMed, Scopus, Science Direct, and Google Scholar. So the following search terms were used: adolescent or youth or teen, problem gambling or pathological gambling, or gambling addiction, and measurement or assessment and review. So PubMed generated 9 articles and 1 was included. Scopus generated 28 articles and 1 was included. Science Direct generated 203 articles and 2 are actually duplicates, so it was excluded. And Google Scholar generated 2,140 articles, but 2 were duplicates and 1 article was included in the study. So the review articles were analyzed where the strengths and weaknesses of the instruments were looked into. Themes were generated based on the identified strengths and weaknesses. So let me present to you what I found out. So in this reviews, in these studies, we have 4 measures assessing problem gambling among adolescents, but I was not able to find a measurement or tool for online problem gambling among adolescents. So I have not found a tool yet that measures online problem gambling. But if you know one, please let me know. I would look into that. So right now, as I have mentioned, it's an iterative process. So right now, I am on the zoom out portion. It's a generalized, So I'm looking at the reviews. So I found some articles related to it. So there are 4 studies which looked into problem gambling among adolescents. So we have the first one, South Oaks Gambling Scale. This is revised for adolescents, or the SOGSTRA. This is the most famous one. And then the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders for Multiple Response Juvenile, Massachusetts Gambling Screen, or the MAGS, and the Canadian Adolescent Gambling Inventory, or the CAGI. So let's look into the different measures. So the SOGSTRA is a 12-item dichotomous screening tool that identifies the signs and symptoms of problem gambling and its consequences. It assesses gambling behaviors such as impaired control, over-involvement, escalating involvement, overspending, and financial consequences over the past year. This was, as I have mentioned a while ago, this was originally developed for the adult population, but adapted for the adolescent population later on. Now, this is used primarily for clinical context. So as you can see, it's more on the psychopathological side of things. And one of the weaknesses of the South Oaks would be the lack of conceptualization of gambling problems among adolescents. And then for the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the Mental Disorders for Multiple Response Juvenile, this is also a 12-item dichotomous test, which is also an adaptation of the adult DSM-4 that assesses pathological gambling and the severity of gambling behavior in juveniles over the past year. So again, if you will see, the 2 measures or the 2 tools is initially developed for adults and adapted to adolescents, and usually they look into psychopathological behaviors. So it includes diagnostic criteria such as preoccupation, tolerance, and escape. It provides a standardized framework for diagnosing problem gambling, but terminologies and conceptualizations may not fully address the complexity of adolescent gambling behaviors. For the Massachusetts Gambling Screen, this is a 14-item test which includes specific terms and criteria that identify possible pathological gambling behavior. It provides classification for non-pathologic gambling, transitional gambling, or pathologic gambling over the past year. And it uses scored item weights. It addresses specific aspects of adolescent gambling and provides insights into problematic behaviors that identifies probable pathological gambling behavior, but it has limitations in terms of its psychometric properties. Now, let's go to CAGI, or the Canadian Adolescent Gambling Inventory. This is a 45-item tool with multiple response format in 3 categories: no problem, low, moderate, and high severity score, measuring characteristics of youth gambling over the past 3 months. This is specifically designed for assessing gambling behavior in adolescents with limited reliability and validity studies. So what are the themes that were generated based on the results of this review? So first, there's standardization and consistency across studies and populations when it comes to these measures. There's also validation and reliability studies in measuring adolescent problem gambling. And sorry. Okay. Okay, comprehensive assessment covering wide range of gambling behaviors and consequences, offering thorough evaluation, and there's clinical relevance for studying at-risk adolescents. And of course, there are tools which are adaptations for adolescents. And of course, the weaknesses. So these are the identified weaknesses of the different measurements. First, there's limited psychometric evaluation of some instruments. As mentioned a while ago, the SOGSRA is the most or the widely used when it comes to measuring problem gambling among adolescents. But some of the other assessment tools have it offers limited studies when it comes to that. And then there's sampling bias variability, which may limit the generalizability of the results, and the lack of adolescent-specific conceptualizations leading to inconclusive results. So basically, if you will look at the last one, this is the most prominent among the measures that was mentioned. So as a conclusion, okay, so when we talk of measuring adolescent problem gambling, adolescence is a critical developmental period calling for specific conceptualizations when it comes to assessments and interventions. And the current tools are instrumental in providing a structured and consistent framework for assessing adolescent problem gambling. However, there is a need to contextualize online problem gambling among adolescents and the need for measurements to address the unique characteristics of adolescent gambling behaviors to enhance their accuracy, reliability, and generalizability. So moving forward, what's next for this particular type of study? So moving forward, as mentioned a while ago, this is the zoomed out version of trying to find out or look for that particular gap. Next is to zoom in and deep dive further into literature, into scale development. So now, after this narrative traditional literature review, I will go deep dive into systematic review of the current tools and generate questions for the scale contextualizing adolescents' life. So with that, thank you very much for your time and listening to my study.
Mary Rose, thank you. That was great. So do we have any questions? So I know it's an important issue in many
Hi.
nations.
It's Kevin Science University of West Indies, St. Augustine campus. I'm just curious, how big a problem do you say is it in the Philippines?
In the Philippines, there's no statistics yet when it comes to that. But me, as a commuter, I commute every day of my life and I am with other people. Every time I see them playing at their apps, even in the grocery while waiting in line to pay in the cashier, I see a lot of people. And people talk about that. Like for example, in the mall, sales lady. But there's no, right now, there's no statistics when it comes to that. But in the Philippines, we have a lot of malls, or I do not know, malls or businesses now popping up related to gambling and casinos.
Okay. So, but so for online gambling, I mean, I would imagine you need like a credit card to do it. I mean.
Yes, yes. We have this
do kids
famous, what do you call that? Mobile or digital GCash card. Yes, we have that. You can pay. That's a digital currency. Not really. Not crypto, but using money. It's digital, so they can just register for that, and that's what they use. So as low as 1 peso, 2 pesos. That's what I hear. I haven't tried it, but that's what I hear from other people.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. This is interesting, actually. For those who want to study this also, you might want to get in touch with me so we can further this study.
Any further questions? Okay, well, I think we will say
Thank you,
Mary
Ben. Thank you,
Rose.
everyone.
So So we are finishing a few minutes early, but we'll just say, Gamsa Hamnida, thank you to all of our speakers. So a round of applause for everybody, please. Thank you. There is a break from past for 30 minutes, although we're finishing slightly early. I'm going to put the QR code on the screen of my iPad and put it by the door so you can scan that on the way out. I'm sure our speakers would be very grateful if you could fill in the feedback that's linked from the QR code. But thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next session. Thanks.